Here's a bizarre quote from Prophet Muhammad. Satan came in front of me and tried to interrupt my prayer, but Allah gave me an upper hand on him and I choked him. No doubt I thought of tying him to one of the pillars of the mosque till you could get up in the morning and see him. But then Allah made him, Satan, return with his head down, humiliated, back to hell. What Muhammad is telling his friends here is that I totally beat up the devil, but you weren't there to see it. I was going to tie him up so you could see that I beat him. But then Allah sent him back to hell. What I read you was from Sahih Bukhari, which in Islam is considered to be one of the most reliable sources of hadith. I think this story is made up. But if this is made up, that means that 90% of what we recognize as Islam today cannot be trusted. More than 90%. If you think this story is not made up, then call us and let us know, because the show is starting right now. Hello, everybody. Today is October 8th, 2023. My name is Armin Navabi, and I'm here today with Jim Barrows. Hi, Jim.
Hey, how's it going, Armin? How you doing today?
Good, good. What do you think about the quote that I just read you from Muhammad?
Sounds a lot like a fisherman's story where they caught the fish that was this big and nobody saw it because it jumped off the line, or they felt sorry for it, or it otherwise just disappeared. So, yeah. I mean, it sounds like one of those types of stories, right? You know, and it goes along with, the Bible's got what's his name wrestling with God, and God had to cheat to win. And either dislocate his hip or punch him in the groin, depending on how you want to interpret the phrase. But yeah, sure, all that happens, and it happens where nobody can see it. So,
To your point, I like how even in the story they didn't mention that, oh yeah, we saw it and Muhammad did it and we all saw it. Even in the story that Muslims say, that Muhammad is like, yeah, you guys missed it. I was praying. You guys didn't show up in the mosque for a morning prayer as early as I did, and you missed an amazing battle between me and the devil. But it just totally happened. It totally happened. It's amazing.
Yeah.
If I was making up the story, I would say like, yeah, we all saw it. Like everybody saw Muhammad just have a battle with the devil.
Exactly. If you're going to do that kind of story, then let's try to at least make it believable. But that's kind of the fun of historical fiction, right? Which is what I know the Bible is. I kind of get that feeling for the Quran as well. And the Hadith, it's also historical fiction, right? There's enough history there to make it believable, but there's also that supernatural or fanciful element that comes into play. How many movies are based on the idea that somebody saw something that nobody else did, and now it's got to convince everybody that the thing exists, right? I mean, that goes back to, Sesame Street had that with Snuffleupagus. Big Bird's the only one who ever saw Snuffleupagus. It's just same things.
Yeah. I have so many more ridiculous hadiths that I would like to share with you guys in maybe future shows, because a lot of people just, when they want to criticize Islam, they just focus on the Quran, but they don't understand that most of what we know about Islam comes from hadith. And it's just a treasure trove of so many funny, ridiculous things that I think it needs to be shared with the world. So I'm going to pick one. I'm going to keep picking them and bring them here for us to
look forward to hearing them and trying to figure out why in the world you would want to, So the real question, I guess, is why do you need that story? What does that story do, right? For Islam, for proving Islam true, what does it do for anybody? It just seems like a silly little anecdote that doesn't really drive any point home, but maybe it does drive a point home, and I don't know what it is. But
I think if I had to guess, is the point is Muhammad's followers believed Muhammad when they didn't see something, so you should do the same. I think so. I think that might be it.
Yeah, you could definitely make that case, but it seems awfully, weak, a weak story to do that with. it just seems like that if any God existed and was any type of rational, that he'd want us to believe for good reason. And that story just doesn't, I don't think, provide a good reason to believe anything. It's a nice story. It's cute. It's kind of funny. But yeah, I don't think it moves the needle at all for me, one way or the other, for belief.
Well, the people who around Muhammad who didn't believe Muhammad, they asked him for miracles. They're like, you should show us something so we could believe in your Allah. And Muhammad said, no, I'm not going to show you anything, because if I show you something and then you don't believe it, then you're really screwed. He said there were other people, other prophets who brought miracles and they still didn't believe, and God destroyed them. So I'm doing you a favor by not showing you any proof, because I know you will still not believe me, but then God will be super angry with you because he showed you a miracle and you still didn't believe it.
Yeah, that sounds like an excuse to me. Yeah, it just sounds like an excuse. Exactly. Why can't you do all these things? Well, I'm doing it to you as a favor. Yeah, sure you are. If other people didn't believe it, then obviously it wasn't a good enough miracle, right? Just, and the thing is, when it comes to like supernatural stories, you could pick any modern piece of fantasy or fiction and get better gods, better magic, better miracles. Everything is just better than what we see today. You can go to like play D&D and the clerics their gods actually interact with them. They give them power. They know they exist because those gods are interacting. It's the same, and yet here we don't have any of that. It's like, where's this interaction coming from, right? Where do the preachers get the power to resist the devil, and how many of them end up, stealing or embezzling money and cheating on their wives and doing all these things, and they don't have the power to resist the quote unquote devil? Well, how are we supposed to, right? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So
I'm not even trying to make sense. Anyway, so I see we have some great calls, but before we take the calls, I need to read a couple of things for you guys. The Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Those are all great things, so I'm glad that we are doing that here. So so there's a question of the week, but this time we didn't have a question of the week. We had a caption of the week. Should we call it that? A caption of the week.
Sure.
So we had a caption contest. So can we get that image on the screen? So we showed you an image and we asked you guys to come up with great captions, and we basically chose 3 of the best ones as the winners for the caption. So the number 1 is from, this is number 3. Number 3 is from Puck Nutten, and the caption is argument. Oh, so you see the image, you see the hand. Yeah, okay, cool. Argument from fishing analogy. So the gap God lives in is this big. Okay, that's not a very big gap. There's not much room left for God, apparently. Okay, so number 2 from, I don't know how to read this, Dogbont Z. Okay, I'm not going to read the name. So this caption says, Forrest's response to the caller was this long. Right? And
that's not long enough for a Forrest response. I don't think an arm span will do it. Because he gives some great detailed responses.
Right. Okay. Now, thank you for explaining the joke, because I didn't get that joke. Thank you. All right. Sonic. Okay. Sonic's caption is saying, local wizard deflects incoming thoughts and prayers to protect his friend. Okay, that's a good one. I like that one.
That could very well be.
Yeah. I see why that's the number 1. I see why that one got the number 1 position.
Yep.
All right. So, so we got the question of the week. We have a new question. This one is not a caption. So the question of the week is wrong answers only. In order to get right with God, one must blank. So you have to fill in the gap. So I read it again. In order to get right with God, one must fill in the gap. What do you think, Jim?
One must remove one's left arm and leg.
Oh
That
my
way
God.
you're only got the right side. Yeah, that way you're always right. 'Cause you that way you're always in the right, no matter what you do. If you cut off the left side of your body, you're always right.
Oh,
And if you have God along,
okay.
you're right with God. I'm here with you, so if I cut off the left side of my body, I'd be right with Armin, right?
That's perfect. I like that. Okay, I don't think anybody's going to be able to beat that answer. But guys, you could try. Leave a comment.
Absolutely try.
Leave your answers in the comment, and our team will pick three of the best ones and read it out on the next show. All right, so I'm excited to go and get some of these calls, and I'm excited because we don't get any that much Islam related calls, and I'm always like, because I'm here, I thought like I hope like people call about Islam, especially if you're a Muslim. Please come and defeat me in front of everybody to show how me as an ex-Muslim don't understand Islam. And that's why I left Islam, because nobody who truly understands Islam would not leave Islam. So you have to come and demonstrate that to everybody. Okay, here's your chance. There's a lot of viewers here, and come humiliate me in front of all these people. Come on, this is a challenge to you. And if you don't, okay, what does that tell? What does that say about your religion? Maybe you don't feel very confident about your religion. Okay, so this is me challenging you. Please come. This is your duty. Islamically, I know enough about Islam to know that it's your duty now to come and defeat me in front of all this audience. Okay. All right. So let's see. We have a call. This is Islam related, so I'm going to take it from D. So D is saying, I have some questions about the Islamic faith and culture that I would like to discuss. So let me see if we could get D on the line. D, hi D.
Hey Armin, hey Jim, how you doing?
Oh, pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. Yeah, I just have a quick question for you. I'm an atheist myself, and I don't know much about Islam religion. I was just curious, though. I have a quick question about the women. They are fully clothed and they wear black, while the men wear white, and the black makes absorbs the heat. So why would the women be fully clothed in black and the men have to wear white and can show skin?
Okay, well, it doesn't say it has to be black or white. The color seems to be more of a cultural thing. It's supposed to be, it's supposed to be fully covered and also not attractive. And the whole point is to protect your property as a man. Women are your property, and you have to basically protect your property from other men. Just like you lock your car or lock your bike or lock your house, you want to make sure that your other men are not lusting over your woman, and that's how you cover them up. It's modesty culture, basically.
Okay, I get that, but so in that culture, so women are property, just like in the Christian Bible it says slaves are the owner's property.
Well, there's different senses of property. I consider it to be property because you have full control over them. You could beat them when they don't listen to you, and it's not. In Islam, you do have slaves, you do have sex slaves where you could trade, you could buy and sell, but technically you can't buy and sell your wives on a market. However, technically there is there's a transaction between you as a husband and the previous and the family, the father, or if the father is dead, the elder men in the previous family. So it's very much like a trade, given that you have full control over your wives. The position of your wife is higher than your slaves in Islam, but I would still consider that even though they are better off, wives are better off than your sex slaves, they are still, because you still have full control over them, and because the process is very much transactional, I will still consider that to be semi-property. Or just property, yeah.
Okay, great. that's a good explanation, but it's kind of crazy. That's why it doesn't seem fair to women or, just in general to humans. That's why I don't really believe in any type of God. So I was just curious about that.
All right. Well, okay. Well, thank you for asking us. Is it Jim? Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I'm just kind of curious why anybody would expect equality to come from a God that is very masculine in its nature, and seems to cater to the whims and desires of men, regardless of which of the Abrahamic religions you ascribe to. They all seem to pretty much have that in common, is a distinct lack of respect for anybody who isn't a man. So just
correct.
Yeah. And honestly, the hijab, as bad as it is, it's. Oh yeah, okay. Thank you, D. All right, so I also want to just add, as bad as the hijab is, it's one of the least relative to other things in Islam, which is anti-woman. I mean, the Quran itself, not the Hadith, the Quran itself clearly says that if your wife is being disobedient, first you have to stop talking to her. If not if she's being disobedient, if you fear her becoming disobedient, so even before she becomes disobedient, but you just are worried about her becoming disobedient, then you should, not that you can, but you should first stop talking to her, give her the silent treatment. If that doesn't work, then make her leave your bed, so don't let her sleep in your bed. And if that doesn't work out, beat her. That's in the Quran. Clearly, in black and white, it explains that beating her is not just an option, but it's a command from Allah, just to make sure your wife is obedient to you. In the same book, in the Quran, it also explains that in war, women who are married, you should not have sex with women who are married, except if you capture them in war, which is basically not sex, just sex, it's RIPE at that point. But even if you capture a woman in war, the Quran clearly indicates that you can basically force yourself on her, even if she has a husband. That's also very clear in the Quran. The Quran also tells you that you could have child wives. A lot of people think that having child wives is only in the Hadith because of the story of Muhammad, but no, even in the Quran itself, it clearly indicates that you are allowed to marry, and not just marry, but also have sexual relationships with children before it clearly says before their period, before the age that they get their period. That's also in the Quran. So there's a lot more things in the Quran that is an anti-woman than just the hijab. Yeah. So there's that. Sorry, I'm starting off very heavy today. I hope I'm not depressing people. Yeah. But anyways, we should get to the next caller.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next call is from T. T is no, that's not T. That's T is for Theist, because the first caller was D. I thought this caller is also a letter. This person's name is Deaf is Conquered. Wow, what a name. So from Texas, is saying wants to discuss the validity of Christianity. All right, let's bring him up. Wants to discuss the validity of Christianity. Hi, Deaf is Conquered. Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
Last week I called in to Jim Barrows and Jay and Mike were in the Atheist Experience, and I talked about the validity to actually, we were talking about. I don't want to shift the topic, but last week I called in about outlawing, a speech against blasphemy. So what Jim Barrows and Jay and Mike told me is because, call another show and prove to us the valid claims or what makes actually, Christianity a valid faith. So today I called in to talk about what makes, in my opinion, what makes Christianity true.
Yeah, can you do something about your background noise? Because you are very difficult to understand for me with all your background noise.
Okay, what about now?
A little better.
Okay.
I didn't understand anything, by the way.
Okay. Well, I'm just calling in to actually say that, what are the things that makes, Christianity true, in my opinion,
Okay.
and what are like objective measures that could make, apostolic doctrine true.
Okay, go ahead. Give us the first one.
So my first will be the peer review in the New Testament. So if you look at Galatians chapter 2, Paul says that his gospel was certified by James, Peter, and James, as well as Peter and all the other apostles. So and also you see in 2 Peter chapter 2 that Peter's gospel was consistent with the words of the Lord.
So the problem you have here is that a book can confirm itself, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean the book is true. We could see the same thing in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, right? Because The Lord of the Rings could be, confirmed that Bilbo went through, found the ring. Just because that's an internal thing to the Bible, and that's assuming. I know that several of Paul's letters are known to be forgeries. And I don't remember if Galatians is one or not, but that doesn't really matter. So what? It has an internal consistency that says that it's true, but that doesn't buy you anything. You have to look outside the Bible for things that are true, because the Bible is the claim. So the Bible claims that in this case that Paul went to James and a bunch of other apostles and got his gospel approved. Okay. How do we know any of those people actually existed? How do we know that they actually did that? And how do we know what it actually means to have it approved? Because you could make the case that Paul never saw a living Jesus. He only saw a spiritual Jesus, and that what Paul preached is very different from what the others preached. So in what sense was what he was preaching true? So I don't care that you found an internal consistency with the Bible. I want some sort of external validation from the book.
What I would disagree is, first of all, I don't think the Bible is a book. I think the Bible is a collection of books. So
right,
even when the writers were
so is the
writing,
Hobbit.
I don't think they were thinking.
The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings are also a collection of books, right? They're series. The Lord of the Rings is a series of 3 books, and the Hobbit is 1 book, so you have 4 books total. So what? Dresden Files is 15 books. Again, so what? It doesn't really change what my counterclaim or my counter argument to you is. How do you know it's true? How do you know that actually happened? What do you have that is external to the Bible? Because fantasy books confirm themselves all the time, right? Fantasy books have people who make predictions and make prophecies, and then someone in the book makes those prophecies true. Big deal. I don't care. So what is it? So I don't care that that your series of books is internally consistent or has internal references. That doesn't buy you anything for me. And I don't know why it buys anything for you either, but apparently it does. So that claim, rejected. What else you got?
Okay. I am a presuppositionalist. I'm a presuppositionalist.
Oh, good. I presuppose that you're a bunch of raccoons in a human suit.
What?
I presuppose that you are a bunch of raccoons in a human suit.
No. What I'm saying is, like, I presuppose that the laws of logic is really important to actually verify the truth of a claim.
I agree.
Okay,
you have no violation of the laws of logic here. You have no violation of the laws of logic here. What you have is a book setting up something to be true, and now you need to go look for external proof that that book is true. And if you don't, then I can claim that the Dresden Files are all true, because the Dresden Files take place in Chicago. They mention real things in Chicago. They mention real places in, real businesses in Chicago that all exist. So what? And they're all internally consistent, and they're all and there's prophecies that the main character Harry Dresden is in fact keeping. So what?
The thing, okay. By the way, can I respond, because Armin was saying that he had a question, but should I go on first, or Armin?
No, go ahead, Armin.
So
So your argument is Paul said somebody like certified what Peter said is correct, then basically goes.
I said no. I did not say that. I said Paul was a letter apostle of Jesus Christ, and Paul's gospel was certified by Peter, James, and all the other apostles that were at the time.
How do you know
when Christ was crucified?
How do you know all these?
Resurrected?
How do we know all these people are telling the truth? Why do you trust any of these guys?
Why I trust is, like, first of all, this is not a thing that. So I'm not saying that all the things that are claimed in the gospel is verifiable. No. That's not my claim here. My claim here is, if we look at the gospel and the doctrines that are in the New Testament, it doesn't violate the laws of logic.
No, my question. My question is: Can Paul have said something that is not true? Is it possible? Is it possible for Paul to have said something that is not true? Is that possible?
How could it be? Because his doctrine is the same as Peter's or James.
Is it? Well, but I can make the case that it's not. I mean, there are multiple people. There are biblical scholars who make the case that Paul's Jesus was not the same as the Jesus of Peter. Because Paul never met the real Jesus, right? Paul only met a spiritual Jesus, and Paul's teachings are in keeping with a lot of the other things that were in the air at the time in terms of multiple heavens and things like that. I mean, you can make the case, but that wasn't the case. So that goes back to my question: is, what does that mean that Peter and the other disciples approved it?
I'm so sorry. I am just like leaving work right now, and I was saying goodbye, and I did not hear what you said.
Oh, I just basically asked you I basically just questioned whether or not, what does it mean that those gospels were approved? And then, like Armin said, how do you know that actually happened? How do you know that Paul's just not making it up wholesale?
Because, for example, if you go to Jim, you said that they preach different Jesuses. They preach different Christ.
Paul did.
And
Paul did, yes.
Okay, you're saying because Paul was not an apostle or follower of Christ at the time Jesus was in the flesh, right? But if Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, even
I don't know that you just made a claim that I don't accept. I don't think that he is the same today. I don't think he has that consistency in his nature at all. Not from the stories. It doesn't follow. He doesn't have the same nature in the New Testament that he does in the Old Testament. They're two very different characters. So I don't accept that at all. So again, you need to prove that what Paul was preaching was actually approved by Peter or anybody else, and not just Paul saying that. So, and then when he does say that, exactly what parts of Paul's gospel do they say is correct?
The part where Christ was crucified and rose from the dead. That part is consistent with all the other apostles.
So what? I mean, it's consistent with every character in the story of Dresden that they all thought Dresden was died. And then there's even a story of Dresden while he was dead and the things that he did or nearly dead, and then he came back. So that's also there. So again, how do I tell the difference between Dresden's resurrection and Jesus's resurrection?
Because Christ's resurrection is consistent also with the Old Testament, not just the New Testament, but you could actually look at Isaiah.
And Dresden's resurrection is consistent with his prophecy as well. So what?
No, like you're trying so hard not to believe in the concept.
No, what I'm asking you to do is to prove something outside of the Bible, and you keep going back to the Bible. And I even brought up the fact that if you have a bunch of prophecies in book 1, it is not unusual. In fact, it is very common for book 2 to have those prophecies get fulfilled, because everybody who was writing about it in book 2 in the New Testament knew about those prophecies and tried to include them. That's why we have two different stories of Jesus. One, Jesus riding a mule, and I forget what the other one was, riding an ass and a mule or something along those lines. He wrote two different things then. Why was that? Because he had two different prophecies to fulfill. And so we have two different stories. He wrote two different beasts in at the same time just to keep both prophecies. Right? The New Testament wasn't written, it doesn't have to be written by a person to make those prophecies be true. It just has to be written by somebody who knows the prophecies. So again, you don't have anything here. All you have is book 2 keeping the prophecies of book 1. Okay, everybody, all the writers of book 2 knew about book 1. They were educated, unlike every single one of Jesus's followers who are not educated, unlettered, and we know that from Acts. So you've got some more explaining to do here, but that doesn't work. That doesn't work at all.
So, Emmanuel, how do you, like, in an environment where everybody knows, like, it was very common for people to create myths, given that you have very, very popular predictions and prophecies about the future, don't you understand how it's very understandable why when people write these news stories and myths, they will try to make it so that it matches the prophecies that they have in their holy books? And also, given that these tropes and these stories and these prophecies are common in that environment, why is it so bizarre for people to have, like, you have Peter and you have Paul, and there are popular stories and myths in that environment, and they're both agreeing on some of them being the same? Like, I don't understand why does that make them not a myth? Like, we see that everywhere else. We see that in environments like in Greek mythology. We see people agreeing on the myth and basically prophecies existing there that people play on to make new mythology. We see that in ancient Egyptian, Sumerian, Persian mythology. We see that in Mayan mythology. We see that everywhere. This does not prove that they're not myths, given that we see this exact same thing that you're describing repeated in other places where you even believe that they are myths.
Is that a question, or are you saying that?
Yeah, but it's a question. I'm saying, like, what you're describing to us is not something that shows to us that these stories are not myths. Given that it's more easier to explain this, given that we have prophecies, we have an environment where people are making stories. They obviously is popular to make your stories match the already existing prophecies. And the similarities between the stories is because certain stories and certain tropes are popular in that environment. Why is any of this show that they are not myths and they're actually true?
Because, like, you're assuming that these stories are myths. So you're
I'm not
somewhere.
I'm not assuming. I'm asking you, how do you know it's not myth? I didn't make any claims. You're claiming that they're real. I'm saying you have to exhaust all these other alternatives, and you haven't. I'm saying where's the contradiction between what you're saying and these stories being mythologies?
Because, like, as I told you, the method that they use, for example, I think it was in University of California, that a certain scientist, he said that he found, he was doing like an experiment, and he did like a research that he was saying that, like the water that we drink, it has like a certain hormonal effect. And other scientists actually peer-reviewed his research, and they said that he was biased. So
you have completely gone off the rails with this, because you have never mentioned this scientist with anything you've said so far. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a complete non sequitur. Can we get back on topic? Why would you expect book 2 to not fulfill book 1's prophecies? How do you know that those prophecies were fulfilled, given that that is a common trope?
Because the apostles of the New Testament were authorized by God, right? God.
How do you know that? How do you know that actually happened? Because remember, we don't accept the claim that God is true. So you saying that God approves something is absolutely no different than the Queen of Air and Darkness, Mab, approving something that Harry Dresden did. They're both fictional characters. You need to prove that these characters were real. And then you need to prove that they actually had the supernatural powers that are claimed. And you haven't done any of that work yet. You simply start with the assumption that the Bible is true. Why should I start with that assumption?
because the visible things, like the things in nature, we know that the natural is from the supernatural. We
No,
know
we
that
don't.
the universe was created.
No, we don't know that. We don't know the universe is created. We know the universe had a begin. The current local instance of this universe had a beginning. We know that, but we don't know what caused it. You're just making that claim.
No, I'm not making that claim. You could go to Hebrews 11:2 and see that the universe.
Again, you're okay. Post hoc rationalization. Can you demonstrate that the authors of Hebrews actually knew what they were talking about, and you just aren't assigning meaning that the authors never had?
Do you not see why it's circular what you're saying to us? Do you not see that you're making a claim that there's a God, and then you're going to scripture that is only reliable if there is a God to prove that prove your God? Do you not see the circular nature of what you're telling us?
Okay. Let's throw out all the scriptures, right, out of our conversation, right? Let's not code the scriptures. So in reality, the things that we see, we observe that the visible things are created in the image of the invisible things. For example, I live in.
No, we don't.
We don't. Okay.
I mean, invisible things by their very nature don't have any image. That's why we call them invisible.
Yeah, and then calling the quantum mechanics the invisible is really weird. So yeah, what do you? I guess I should go back. Let me retract. We don't. What do you mean by invisible?
Invisible in a sense that we can't actually see God, right? Even when we go to
you're still making the claim that God exists, which we don't reject. We're looking for evidence, right? And there is nothing in the natural world, there's no phenomenon that we can show requires something supernatural. Every phenomenon, from storms to earthquakes, wind, tornadoes, hurricanes, disease, all of these things all at one time had supernatural causes, and we now know that's all BS. So we need to make sure that we don't see any need for anything supernatural for anything, and the supernatural, when it comes up against the natural explanation, fails. So first, can you establish what supernatural thing exists and how the supernatural interacts with the natural?
For example, we have. I've said it before, but I don't want to go there again. The thing that show me that God is actually real is we seem to have a consistent moral model when we live on this earth.
Okay,
right?
except there's a better explanation for morals than God. Because right now, what you have to do is you have to explain why we see morals in meerkats, rats, horses, wolves, and every other social species all have the exact same element of morals that we do. So now you've got to explain that. But I can explain that naturally because cooperation is a survival strategy. And that explains why meerkats will risk their lives to warn their group of an incoming predator, just like humans will. That's why we can see in rats that rats will not knowingly commit an action that will hurt another rat, even if they don't know that rat, and no matter what the reward is. That's not something that humans will do. We can see all these differences in every social animal. So how do you explain that we see moral behavior in non-human animals with God? How do you explain that?
Because all the species were created with God, right? So that's why we have, for example, a dog.
Why would God put morals into meerkats? Why would God make meerkats moral? Have morals in meerkats?
Because nature has to balance for us to survive.
But that's a claim. Okay, no. But Emmanuel, do you understand? For you to prove something, when you're trying to prove something, you cannot put the thing that you're trying to prove inside the argument itself. Like you are saying, we have morality. You're trying to use morality as a way to prove that there's a God. But then in the argument, you're pre-assuming God. But without pre-assuming God, can you tell us why humans and animals having morality or any sense of like kindness or cooperation, why does that prove God? Can you tell us how do you connect these together without using God himself? Because remember, we haven't concluded God yet, so you cannot use God in your arguments. You have to get us there before you could use it. So tell us why morality proves the existence of God.
Because if you see all the other religion God claims, for example, there's only one God, right? The Father.
We don't care about the other
You
gods.
said-
We want you to
I
talk
just
about your
told
God.
you. I just told you, Emmanuel. Did you not understand? I just told you cannot use God. We haven't assumed God yet. You cannot pre-assume God in your proof for the existence of God. I just told you that, and the first thing you said, you mentioned God. Like, do you not understand how proving something works? That your God is supposed to be in the conclusion, not in the premises of your argument.
Okay, the premise is for us to exist in nature, for nature to balance itself, we need a sort of like kindness and compassion to our own species, right? So for that to actually occur, there has to be an outside source, which is a creator type.
No.
Why?
Why does it have to come from outside? Why can't it just be that cooperation is a survival strategy and is a byproduct of evolution? I have a perfectly natural explanation that explains moral behavior in every single social species we come across. We even see it in bacteria. So, or some elements of it, bacteria. It's very primitive. But we see this, and I have a natural explanation for it. Where's God needed in my explanation? Where's God in that?
Because, like, just if everyone was psychotic, there are people who have psychotic problems, right?
And that's consistent with nature, not with God. Otherwise, God screwed his creation up.
Tell us, Emmanuel, why? Tell us why the God explanation is the only explanation that is reasonable for us having morality. Tell us that.
Because if I took on your worldview, let's say I don't believe in any sort of deity or a creator, right? I don't believe that the Christian God and all the other gods are false, right? Let's say I'm a skeptic or agnostic, and that's the scenario. In my scenario, I have nothing to actually justify why we see, like, for example, when I see a person who is distressed, when I see people in calamity, why do I feel that sort of empathy, right? It's
because
Jim
you
just told you.
Yeah, I just told you that. Because cooperation is a survival strategy. I do it out of selfish interest. I can do it purely out of selfish interest. I can do it simply because I want other people to help me if I was in that situation, right? That's why we have empathy. But you're pointing out that we have people, who are born without empathy, actually is evidence in my favor and not evidence in yours, because that would mean that God screwed up his creation.
No.
And that God's a bad designer.
No. See, Emmanuel, social animals that live together. Okay, if they have a desire for cooperation, it's easier for them to survive. Okay, so it's so obvious why we have that natural trait, because with that desire, we will work with each other more effectively. And if we work with each other more effectively, there's a higher chance for us not to go extinct.
Yep.
That's a pretty easy. It's pretty easy to explain this. I don't know. I understand why you're confused by this.
Right.
Okay, but can I just respond to what Jim said? Because in my worldview, the reason why this sort of people exist is because God has predestined a certain people for honor and a certain people for dishonor. That's why we have Christians and atheists.
Why would he do that? What's the purpose in doing that? Why would he create things? Why would a perfect being create imperfect things?
Because why did he create hell? Like, what is the point of him actually creating an eternal torment, right?
I have no idea. You're the one making these claims. You come up with the reasoning. I'm asking you, what is all this reason? What's the reason behind it? But let's stick to the question I actually asked. What's the reason for him creating people who have no empathy?
Because he gets glory. At the end, when they die, they go to hell, right? All murderers, stealers, the people who don't obey the
God
gospel.
wants people to go to hell, is what you're telling me.
He gets glory out of glory out of burning people. Right? God creates imperfect beings so he could burn them because for his glory. I burn you for my glory. That's amazing.
That makes him a moral monster. That makes him a monster. That makes him evil. That makes him wrong. Because if any human created kids, had kids born simply so they could torture them, there'd be people who are against the death penalty who would all of a sudden be for it, for that. And we definitely at least, lock them up and throw away the key. So that makes him a moral monster. That's not helping your case.
Emmanuel, I want to make this clear. You just told us that God makes us imperfect so he could burn us for his glory. That sounds demonic. Like, are you sure you're on the good side? If your religion is true, are you sure you're on the good side of this? Because it seems like it sounds pretty evil.
No. I did not say God created everyone so that he could go as this.
And he created one person just so he could send him to hell. Makes him a moral monster. Makes him less moral than most humans. And definitely makes him less moral than me, because I would never do that. And I would definitely I am not generally for the death penalty, but you show me somebody who is having kids born just so they can torture them later. Yeah, I'm for the death penalty for that guy or gal. Doesn't matter. Whoever that person is, I'm for the death penalty for them. And I'm not normally that way. So you're basically creating a moral monster. You recognize that, right? You recognize that God creating someone just so he could punish them forever is evil.
No, because I don't think that God is evil, because God is creating.
What do you call somebody who creates a living person just so they can torture them? What do you call someone? Is that person evil or good?
No, because if that person is actually giving me gifts and doing good things to me, I could still say that they have been good to me, even though they are doing horrible things to others.
But people without empathy do good things for the people around them so that they can hide the fact that they're actually serial killers. Does that make them good people?
No.
Well, then why are you giving God this excuse?
Because God has saved his chosen elect people who are elected before.
Serial killers. You just said serial killers. Serial killers doing the exact same thing that you claim your God doing are evil, but your God isn't. You're making a special exception for your God.
Emmanuel, am I getting this right? You're saying God is not evil for burning a whole bunch of people that he specifically created to burn, because certain chosen people get to not burn? Is that the reason why God is not evil? Because his chosen people are not going to burn.
Exactly.
Oh, exactly. Okay, great.
Wow. Okay, so a serial killer who doesn't kill his family and does nice things for them, but kills people is morally good. That's what you're saying?
Because the things that I focus on is the people who are going.
You're giving your God special dispensation to be an evil monster. If you took God's behavior and applied that to a human, you'd consider that human evil. We've already established that. But because it's your God, he's good. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. That just makes your God a moral monster.
Emmanuel, you realize you're saying God is not evil because he doesn't burn everybody. He burns many people forever based on how he made them. He made them specifically for burning forever, but because he doesn't do that to everybody, he's not evil. Is that what you're saying?
No, because you're not seeing the entire picture, because all of us deserve to burn in hell, right? But God chose a certain people to actually.
I don't deserve. Why do I deserve to burn in? I don't deserve to burn in hell. Why do I deserve
I
to
don't
burn in
deserve.
hell?
Yeah, nobody deserves eternal
Okay, you
torment.
don't
Sorry.
deserve? Okay. Do you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ?
No, we're atheists. Do you remember? Did you forget who you're calling?
It's,
Hey, I know.
it's called
I'm
the
saying,
name of the show is the Atheist Experience. I think you should know that by now. You've been calling us a lot, so I don't know how you haven't caught up to that yet.
no. That was actually a rhetorical question. My point is, if you don't believe in God, then God is going to give you the punishment.
Why? If I'm not, why is it that if I don't believe in God, I deserve to be burned forever? Why?
No. I'm saying all of us deserve it, but
No, I'm saying,
you
and we're countering that with no human being deserves it. Anyway, we're not really getting anywhere. You need to figure out why your God is not a moral monster without making him an exception to, take whatever God does, assume a human did it, and ask yourself, would I want that human behind bars? And if the answer is yes, that also means that you want your God behind bars. So then you need to figure out why you worship this being that does such evil things. So that's what you need to go do, because you believe in an evil God, and there's just no way around it. The closer you get to the God of the Bible, either the Old or the New Testament, the more evil he becomes. And oh, by the way, there's a sect of Christianity that makes that claim. Just as an aside. But anyway, yeah.
Jim, how has this religion survived this long? Like, they're telling that Christianity is a religion that tells us we're all disgusting. We all deserve to burn forever. Why is this religion so popular? I don't understand.
Oh, it's not the quality of the arguments. It's the quality of the violence. It's the quality of the violence. I mean, they convinced the most powerful man on the planet at the time, a Roman emperor, that they were right. And then it spread, by the force and will of his army. And that has been the case. You go look at the conquistadors and what they did in South America. You look what happened here in North America. It was not the quality of their argument; it was the quality of their violence. Yeah.
By the way, if you're a Christian, try coming on our side. Try becoming a humanist atheist, where you're not considered to be a disgusting, worthless filth deserving of eternal torments. Okay, maybe try.
Yeah.
It's nicer on this side. Try it.
That's better.
I have some super chats that I'm going to read, and then after that, we're going to go take another call. So, Robin, a member for 1 year. Thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying great host. And then Humanistic Jewish Music member for 1 month with the £5 super chat saying, if the Quran's message is the same for all time and people, and it was people that corrupted it, why are only the Israelites commanded to keep the Sabbath? Well, I mean, if I was putting a Muslim hat on, I would say because the Jewish people corrupted it. That was not the original message. So that's basically the explanation that a Muslim would give it. Thomas is saying, it moved. So Thomas, new member with a $2 super chat saying, where is it? Thanks, Jim and Armin, for all you do. You're the best. Thank you so much to Thomas. Did I miss anything? I think I didn't. No,
I don't think you missed anything.
Okay. And then we have Miranda with the $5 super chat saying, thanks for another great show. You all are heroes. Oh my God, for dealing with some of these callers week after week. Okay. Well, I don't know about heroes, but I'll take it. I take it. All right. So let's go and take a call from Ollie. Yes, Ollie from the UK is saying, can secular humanism tolerate the existence of religions? And if so, how? Okay, I am actually I have a lot of opinions about this, but I'm going to let Ollie talk before I respond. People are going to think I'm too aggressive on this, but we'll see. Ollie, go on.
Hi, Armin. Thank you. So my thinking was, based on all the religions that I've read, that each and every religion basically, I'm paraphrasing heavily, says that their way is the true way, the only way, and all other ways are wrong, etc. Right? That in mind, secular humanism doesn't, but can you tolerate intolerance? can intolerance be tolerated? I don't see how. So that's why I sent my question to you. And thanks very much for answering the call, guys.
Yeah, I don't know how it couldn't. I mean, it's basically secular humanism is just the belief that human beings are capable of being ethical and moral without religion or belief in a deity. We don't assume that humans are inherently good or evil. It doesn't present humans as being superior to nature. It doesn't do any of that. And if some religion wants to claim they have the only truth, okay, as long as that truth is, as long as they're not using violence to spread their message, I don't know that there's anything wrong with allowing them to be around. Honestly, as secular humanism, I don't think we need to be militant about it. I think we just need to keep asking questions like, why do you believe what you believe? Why do you think that God is moral if he creates people who he knows he's going to have to send to hell? And he's got the power to change that, and he doesn't. How do those are the kinds of questions we ask. But yeah, we should not be as humanists. We shouldn't take playbooks from people we think are dead wrong on a lot of things. We should be very careful about what actions we take and what we're willing to tolerate or not tolerate. And, because not every person who believes in Islam, for instance, is as militant as some of the people who make the headlines, like we're seeing over in the Middle East today, right? Not every Muslim believes that. That's okay. Not every Christian believes that, all other religions need to be exterminated. Some Christians do. But most don't. And so when you start doing these types of absolutes, that's the problem you run into. You're painting with too broad a brush. There are a lot of people out there who are so close to being humanists themselves that it's scary. The only thing is they still believe in a God. That's the last little piece. So if we brand everybody with that same brush, all we're going to do is piss those people off and actually drive them further into the religion and further away from what we actually want.
Well, I have a different take on this than Jimmy. So it's going to be some disagreements here. Okay, so I think the way we need to think about this is to separate the people from the religion, right? And we have to ask, what are we being tolerant of? If you're talking about the religious people, I completely agree. We need to be tolerant of religious people. But if you're talking about religious, yes, when we're talking about religious ideas, then I think when I don't want to be tolerant of religious ideas for the same reason I don't want to be tolerant of any wrong ideas. I'm against wrong beliefs. I want to eliminate wrong beliefs as much as possible. So given that religions are a subcategory of wrong beliefs, I want to eliminate religions. This is hostile towards the ideas. It's not hostile toward the people who believe those ideas, especially because the best way to eliminate and destroy religious ideas is to be friendly to the people who have it. So I do want to exterminate all religions, okay? But the process of doing that requires you to be close to people. Like, I don't want to exterminate the religious people. I want to convince. This is not something that is done by force or something that is forced upon any group of people. In fact, it requires invitation and talking, and it's a very long-term process. And I know it's an ideal that we might never ever get to, but it is something, a destination that I'm trying to move, one step at a time towards. But and I don't want to do it because I don't want it. It's not a position against religious people. It's actually for the sake of religious people, because religion hurts non-religious people, but it hurts religious people the most. Even if they are, and I understand that the radicals and the people from who hurt others because of religion, they're a minority, and most religious people are good and kind people. But because of the false belief that they have, they end up making. This is not about me protecting myself. This is about understanding that they're making decisions day to day based on false belief that is not going to get the things that they want. If you have beliefs that doesn't match reality, you're handicapped relative to have to people that have beliefs that are closer to reality. So it's for your own sake. And again, it's an invitation. I think that people, if we don't fight religion, we are forcing something on religious people. Because if you don't try to fight against religion, what religious people have is limited options. All we're doing is adding to the options they can choose from. We're coming to them and we're telling them. So not only it's not forcing something on them, it's actually increasing their choices and increasing the possibility for them to understand that there are alternatives. I think if we don't fight their ideas, then we're forcing them to live in the bubble that they're born into. So again, I am trying to exterminate religions, but I am not fighting against religious people. I'm trying to. Your question is, can secular humanism tolerate the existence of religions? I say no, because humanism requires us to care for humans, and religion is anti-human. So I cannot tolerate religions because religion is anti-human, and as a humanist, I can't tolerate anything that is anti-human.
Okay, I'm totally with all that. I do have another little sort of contingent point, if I may make it. I appreciate you guys have got limited time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so people hold their ideas very closely. We heard that before with the previous caller. They hold their ideas so closely that they will not step away from them in the face of anything a lot of the time. So what are we doing here with this being nice and this taking this gentle approach? How does that get us anywhere? Like, I have challenged preachers in the street. I have done that sort of thing, and it has worked, usually through ridicule, I'll be honest. But that's worked for me. I've stopped the fire and brimstone kind of preachers in my own hometown. So I don't see that the nice approach, the kind invitational approach that you're taking is very effective. I think that maybe ridicule and scorn might be more effective in some ways. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of things to that, and there's actually a study in the UK, and I wish I'll try and find it if I need to, where they found that ridicule and scorn really doesn't move the needle in terms of convincing people of anything. And so it seems to be less effective than having conversations with them. Another thing that I'll point out is that for a really, really long time, a lot of white supremacists and all that were ridiculed and scorned and basically forced back into the closet. And that did nothing for us. We've got them back in force, out loud and proud now. And that didn't work. That didn't work because we forced them to hide them in corners where they allowed their hatred and their anger to fester and to burn away until there was enough of them that they could come out of the shadows. So I don't think that's as effective as we would like. We need to make sure that we engage with these people civilly, that we don't live up to any stereotypes, bad stereotypes they have of us, create some new good stereotypes, and keep moving that forward and not drive them into the shadows through ridicule and scorn and shame, because those aren't effective tools. If they were effective tools, then we'd be seeing them in places like leadership books, and how to convince somebody, and these types of books, and that's not what we see. One of my favorite books is by Chris Voss, who is a former lead negotiator for the FBI International Kidnapping Team. And none of those techniques work at all. They don't work even with kidnappers in our own borders, where the FBI or the local police department can actually bring in a SWAT team. They don't always, the SWAT teams are always the high risk thing. And so we do see, understand first, talk to them, be reasonable, be kind, keep your promises. We find that those work in those stressful situations. We don't find what you're suggesting to work. The problem is that it takes time, especially when you're talking, a cultural shift, especially here in the United States. It just takes time, and yeah, it does. It is, and that time and that patience is hard to muster, but it's something we have to have because we're winning that, right? We're winning this. This country used to be 90% Christian, and now it's only 60, 70%. That's huge. 30% drop. That's huge. And as long as we keep going that direction, then what we're doing is actually working.
Yeah. Ollie, may I add something? I don't know. I want to get Jim's opinion on this as well, because the way I try to go about it is to see, because as Jim said, this takes time. So my philosophy is that the more conversation we're having, the better it's going to be, as long as we're continuing to have that conversation. And I try to, for me, it's different from one theist to another. I try to see the personality of the person I'm talking to. And I notice with some of them, the kinder and gentler you are, the more they're interested in carrying out the conversation. But I also notice some theists that they actually like it if it's a little bit more aggressive. They want to be aggressive and they enjoy it if you're being aggressive back, and the conversation lasts longer if that's the type of conversation that you're having with them. So I think, like, I try to understand the personality of the person I'm talking to, and I just choose the type of conversation, the style of conversation where I think will make this conversation last longer and for them to engage more in that discussion. That's how I go about it.
Oh, okay. I do feel as if maybe I was a bit hasty with my choice of words, but yeah, you're absolutely right that those tools don't work in the process of convincing people of a point of view. Of course, indisputable. But these conversations never happen in a vacuum. These conversations happen with other people around us. And the examples that I have in my head are purely anecdotal, very, very short version of it. A street preacher was giving us his fire and brimstone, his doomsday and darkness. And I made people laugh at what he was saying. Not at him, but I made people laugh at what he was saying. And the crowd wandered away and gave up, and people tried to mob me into a corner and tell me off. And they were all plants in his audience. But anyway, different story. Without scorn and humor and a certain intolerance of I can swear here, right, of his bullshit, it's just we can't accept that forever, right? We can't just leave that unchallenged. We have to challenge it wherever we see it, right? That's an acceptable level of intolerance, right? No?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're up to it, I don't think every atheist needs to confront every street preacher. But those of us who are ready, willing, and able should absolutely confront it whenever we see it. Absolutely, I agree with that. I just don't think every atheist needs to be on that same page, though.
No, absolutely.
All right.
I tell people how to do. Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Yep.
It's been
Thank
great
you.
talking to you. Take care.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you so much. All right, we have a theist caller. I know, so I want to get through this next part fast, because I'm very excited about this next caller that I'm going to bring up. All right, so if you like what we do and would like to support us, here are some of the ways to support the Atheist Experience and the ACA. We have a brand new, exciting way to support the ACA. Buy a custom engraved brick and become part of the library's legacy. Check out this video. What is this video?
Have you ever wanted to make a permanent impact on the atheist community of Austin? Help support our space for free thought by buying a custom engraved brick to be laid on the building grounds to help raise funds for improvements. Our building has stood as a beacon for years, bringing people together. But 3 years of emptiness due to the pandemic have taken a toll, leaving it in disrepair. Help us restore this hub of connection and support by buying a brick. Moses had his stone tablets, but we're doing our own version. Join our brick fundraiser and let your engraved messages stand the test of time, minus commandments. Visit tiny.cc/ACA bricks for more information.
Okay, so that video, I get it now. All right, so become a channel member. So become a channel member for as little as 99 cents a month. That low. Click the join button right next to the subscribe button. I think it's right next to the subscribe button, and then you could become a member. Guys, you get to have all these emojis. You see it on the screen. The people in the live chat who are members, use your emojis right now so people who are not members can see what you have access to, and they don't, so that maybe they become members. All right, and there's that. And also you could use super chats. So you saw I read the super chats, so if you send us super chats, I will read them. So that's another way to support the
And
show.
we will say
yeah.
anything you put on that super chat. So if you want to make us say really ridiculous and silly things, well, you're going to have to
Anything?
cough up some. Yeah, we're going to read it. So, yeah, doesn't mean we
don't
mean
know.
it. Just means we'll read it.
Anything, as long as it's within the TOS of YouTube, I think. Like we should.
Yeah,
say
as
that.
long as it's the terms of service, the TOS. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll read it. We won't necessarily mean it, but we'll read it. So
okay.
you can have some fun with that if you want. But you're going to have to cough up some coin for that.
And also, there's prints. What are these? These are, you could buy and call in flyers on atheist-community.org. So you could buy these, and what you could do with them, you could post them with permission. You could post them in different places, like onto community bulletin boards or
cool.
other places. Yeah, so people could know that they should call into our show. That's a great idea, guys. So yeah, please do that. You could support us that way. Amazing. All right, so I'm excited about this next call. I hope it's as exciting as I think it's going to be. Let me bring on Joey from Texas, who's saying, only Jesus can save. That's a pretty bold claim. Let's see. Hi, Joey.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that only Jesus can save in terms
Save
of
what?
like of our lives, in terms of our
What do I need
condition. And
what's wrong with my life? I need to be saved from it. I have a really great life, by the way. I have designed it very well, and I enjoy every minute of it. So why do I need to be saved from it?
It's the state of its temporariness. It's like we should look to things above and not things below. It's like there's things that.
Why should I not focus having as much enjoyment as possible in this moment, given that I could die tomorrow or die in my sleep or die in 20, 30, or 40 years? I should enjoy every moment of it, shouldn't I?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It's like the heart of the afflicted, right, is evil like every day. But he who has like a joyful heart is...
I have a joyful heart. I have no God in my life. I have no God looking over me. I don't believe that a God is necessary to anything. And I have a very joyful heart. I had an absolute blast yesterday. I had an absolute blast earlier today. And next weekend when I go scuba diving, I'm going to have another absolute blast. In my week in between, I'm going to have some fun time. Not an absolute blast because I got to go to work, but that's life. So again, I have all these things you claim I only need Jesus for, and yet I don't have Jesus. So what? What is Jesus saving us from?
Death.
Death? Now that would be cool. Can you prove that Jesus can save us from death? And how would you do that?
He was the only person
that would be amazing. Yeah, tell us if you have proof. That I will sign up for that. How do you know that?
By the testimony of the apostles and the written.
Well, so here's the problem. You've got a book, you call it the Bible, that says Jesus rose from the dead. I've got another book called the Dresden Files, where Harry Dresden's also risen from the dead. And I've got a third book, right, called The Lord of the Rings, in which Gandalf rises from the dead. So how do I tell which of those three actually happened?
The Jews are the witness for God.
I have witnesses for the resurrection and the other two stories as well.
Yeah, Joe, there's no witnesses. There's the claims of witnesses. How do you know the claims of witnesses is true? There's claims to have, like, you don't actually have the witnesses. There are people who claiming that there were witnesses. How do you know that claim is true?
It's well, how do you know that a claim is true? To the point that these people testified on behalf of the things that Jesus said, to such a degree where they were willing to give their lives for it. If they made it up.
How do you know that
wait. I know.
Go ahead, Armin.
Sorry. There are a lot of Muslims. Do you believe in Islam? Do you believe Prophet Muhammad is real, like he was a prophet, and Allah is real, and Muhammad was his prophet? Do you believe that?
I I believe that Muhammad was a false prophet that Jesus warned about.
Okay, now do you believe that Muhammad was sent by Allah by God to bring us to give us a message, his message? Do you believe that?
No, because
the answer is no. You don't believe. No. Okay, so there are a lot of people who have died for that claim, and are willing to die for that today. In fact, there are a lot of people who are dying for this claim as we speak right now in Israel, right? So just because people are willing to die for something that they believe to be true, it doesn't make it true. So that's not good evidence. Do you have anything else?
It's not. Well, we have to consider the context. It's like they're willing to die on behalf of what somebody told them, but the apostles were witnesses, so they were willing to stake their life on their own.
That's what we're trying to establish.
Well, so Armin, he's saying that there are eyewitnesses to what Jesus did. And here's my question. How do you know any of them died that way?
Peter, in 2 Peter, the last book that Peter wrote, he mentions himself by name, that I, Peter, an apostle of Christ. Like he's testifying that he already perceives that his time is coming.
So what? Again, how do you know that any of these people died for their ability? Any of the eyewitnesses died? Oh, let's leave Peter out because there is something with Peter, but how do you know any of the others did? And if you don't know, I can tell you how you know that.
All we need is one witness to be confirmed and true. Like we have people who, by your logic, Jim Jones and David Koresh are both true prophets. Oh, it's because the apostles were Jews and they witnessed Jesus as the Messiah.
And people witness both those individuals do things and say things, and they believe them, and they died for those directly. So you've got the exact same situation being set up in real life. By your logic, those two are true prophets. There's no difference between your claims for Jesus and their claims for Koresh and Jim Jones. No difference.
Not only that, Joey, the claims about Jesus, we constantly evolved in that environment. Like, not only what you're saying is not reliable evidence, we actually have evidence that they kept on increasing Jesus's powers and the claims that they were making about it through time. We have evidence
just through the Gospels. Just through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? John, Jesus is very supernatural. Mark, the first one, not so much. So, yeah, you even have that improving in storytelling happening within the Gospels.
Yeah, we can see how Jesus' story was evolving, just like every other religious figures throughout history. Like we see how Muhammad's story was evolving. We see how Jesus' story was evolving. We see how Shiva's story was evolving. So your myth, your God, was the claims that people around him were making about him, like in that environment, was behaving in the same way that we see with every other religion, which makes them unreliable.
The thing is, it's like you make the claims that the Bible was progressively getting bigger, or like the story, and it's like,
I mean, it's within your own Gospels.
Go read Mark. Go read Mark and find me one supernatural element of Jesus' story, except for the resurrection, because that's the only supernatural in Mark. And then go look at John. Right. And then you go look at Matthew. Matthew is like 80% word for word what's in Mark. And John contains a lot of Mark word for word as well. So you don't have four separate stories. The only story that doesn't have a lot of Mark in it is Luke. So you got 3 out of the 4 stories directly copying from the first one, Mark. How do you get to any of this stuff? Because you can see how things get added into the story, just like we see in other stories.
It's not that they were adding to the story. It's just that it's a narrative. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And the stories are going to align in similar fashion because it has a beginning, middle, and end. And therefore,
and so I agree. So here's the evolution of the story. In Mark ends very powerfully with the women running away and said nothing to nobody. So how we know that Jesus actually rose from the dead when they said nothing, we don't really know. But then you have somebody coming along and saying, oh, well, how do you know he rose from the dead? How do you know his body wasn't stolen? And then all of a sudden you get guards, Roman guards. Oh yeah, Roman guards. They're on duty. Well, then how did he walk out? Oh, you see, you get this evolution of the story that is simply because, and the most logical reason is because of objections people rose to the story in the beginning. And so you have to overcome those objections. How do you do that? You add stuff to the story, right? And that's the problem, because you don't have any evidence for Roman guards. In fact, I would say that we go with some pretty good reasons why there wouldn't be Roman soldiers in front of that tomb. It just doesn't make any sense, not from a military point of view. And you certainly wouldn't send your best soldiers for that duty. As a former soldier myself, and I think most soldiers disagree, you send your scrubs, your people most likely to fall asleep in that duty. But again, all you've got are these stories. So how do we know that these stories are true?
And Joey, do you know that some early Christians testified that Jesus flew around like Superman in the sky? Like, did you know that was part of the stories?
So those are myths, because because what happened was that there was the testimony of Christ, and then there was various other stories that were developed around the true story, which was
these are part of the Gospels that were not accepted by the Constantine and all the other the Roman Christians. Many years later, Christians decided which stories should be canonized and which stories should not be canonized. This story didn't make it in. Jesus flying around like Superman didn't make it in. Like, you are trusting those Roman scholars and the Roman Empire for your religion. Like, you are putting your faith in men deciding which stories were real and which stories weren't. If they had picked the story of Jesus flying around to be canonized in the Bible, you would have now believed in it.
Right. And the stories that we have for everybody but Peter, all the apostles but Peter, being put to death for their beliefs. And Peter, I think we make an argument that Peter wasn't put to death for his beliefs, but for their beliefs, all come from Gospels that aren't in the Bible.
Right.
Period. You don't have any evidence that people died for a lie. You don't have any of them died. They all just walk off stage, and we don't ever hear from them again in any of the canonized Bible. We only get that from Bible stories that have been rejected. And if they've been rejected wholesale, why should we believe any of them?
Yeah, why exactly, Joey? Why is it that the parts of Christianity that you think are true happen to be exactly the same parts that people many years later within the Roman Empire decided that to canonize, and for some reason every single one of them that was rejected by the people many years later in the Roman Empire happened to be exactly the ones that are not true? If it was other books, wouldn't you be basically saying those other claims are true if the Roman Empire canonized those ones within the Bible?
Oh, it's because the same things that they saw as inconsistencies within the Testament, especially if they knew if they were from other sources, they would have left those out.
No. It was completely political. It was based. If you actually go read the history, it was basically based on what was what gave them the most political power. It was a completely political game. It was not based on which one is actually true.
That's based on opinion. That's based on
the
claim itself.
Go read the history. Go read the history. So if you agree that we had Christians early Christians claiming that, go on.
Yeah. So just to clarify Armin's point, the whole reason why they had the council to figure out what was true was because there were so many stories and they had to figure it out. What stories were true and what weren't. And so they took all the stories and they came up with a common narrative, and they said, these are all the ones that are there. And, some books like Revelation were very controversial because I knew that Revelation was about Rome and not about the future. And yet some folks convinced people that it was about the future and not just about the end of Rome. So you have all this stuff, and it was political because it had to be, right? We had to figure out which one was right. And so they brought all the stories together and threw out the ones they didn't like. But you look at their reasoning, and that's all they were doing. They were reasoning. They didn't actually how would you prove that God inspired them somehow? How would you go about proving that God inspired the council that put the Bible together in its final form or nearly final form was inspired by God? How would you prove that?
I think that the Holy Spirit does work. It's not something that can.
But that's your claim. I'm asking you to prove it.
It's not provable in any testable method.
Is it reasonable to believe in things you can't prove are true? Is it reasonable to believe things are true that you cannot prove are true?
If you can justify by means of reason through faith, because faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Is faith a reliable way to come up with, to figure out whether a claim is justifiable? Is faith reliable?
Faith is reliable through reason.
Oh, so we
have reason, we have faith. We have two things. We have two tools here.
If I have faith that you're a bunch of gerbils in a human suit, how would I go about? Can I have faith in that? And then does that make that true that you're nothing more than gerbils in a human suit?
There's no reason behind it besides
the
claim. But when
it's just faith,
you define faith. Joey, define faith for us.
Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And there's
so what you describe goes against reason. So you cannot say faith through reason.
Right.
You say believing in things that doesn't have any evidence. That is basically the opposite of reason. So we have reason, which we know is one of the most reliable ways. So we have rationalism. We have empiricism. Empiricism is one of the best way that we have right now to come up with conclusions. After that is rationalism, which is not as reliable, but is pretty good if we don't have empirical data. And now you have faith. So we know the utility of rationalism and empiricism. Tell us what's the utility of faith. Why should we use that tool to figure out what's true and what's not?
It's because to some degree, every belief requires a degree of faith, because you have to take by faith that something is true.
No, it doesn't. If I use you based on your definition of faith, if I have any evidence for my claims, I'm not using faith based on exactly the definition that you just gave us.
It's like, what was that?
I said, based on the definition that you just gave us for faith, if I have any evidence for my claim, I'm not using faith.
Well, that's the thing. Like, your claim is still, like, we can find evidence for these things, but it's not.
Well, if I find evidence, then I'm not using faith. If you give me evidence, then you're not using faith based on your own definition. So for your method to work, you have to show us why not relying on evidence is a better way. You just told us what you mean by faith, so we should not be using evidence. Tell us why you think that's a proper way for us to come up with a conclusion. I make a claim A, okay? I have no evidence for it. You want to prove to me that A is true. You're going to use faith. Tell me why. How do you know faith is a good, reliable method for you to show me that A is true?
Okay, I will agree with this. You do have a point. Because in terms of requiring evidence, it's as Jesus said, it's blessed are those that have not seen yet believe. So there is a degree in which faith is separate from evidence, but blessed are those that have not seen yet believe.
Okay, so why is this now explain to me, now that we understand that faith does not require evidence, tell me why it's a good way. Why should I, let's say, for example, you're making a claim and the only tool you have in your toolbox to show me that your claim is true is faith. Why should I trust your methodology? Why does this tell me? For example, when I want to show you why empiricism is a good, reliable way for us to come up to distinguish between a belief that is more likely true than not true. I have a lot of evidence for it. I could explain that to you. Now you do that with faith for me. Why is somebody that is using faith to claim that A is true will make A more true, will make A reliable, a justifiable belief if we apply faith to that claim? How do you know that?
It's like I mentioned, faith. Well, it's like I mentioned before. It's like there's blessed are those that have not believed, that have not seen yet believed. And
I understand that they're blessed. I understand that you're saying that they're blessed. That's not my question. Okay. My question is, how do you know faith works as a way for us to show what is real? Do you understand that faith as a methodology is completely random? Because if I could say A is true with faith, I could say use that on anything. It has no limitation. The main characteristics of rationalism and empiricism is that it does not leave your hand open. There are limitations. But faith has no limitation. Given that it has no limitation, any random claim that you could make, applying faith to it, will mean that it's true. If it has no limitation, do you understand what the floodgates of insanity that you're opening to us if you apply faith? Any claim could be true with faith. I only have to come and say, I have faith, and then you have to accept it as a methodology.
But
that's what Jim is trying to do. That's what Jim is trying to do when he says, like, oh, I have faith that you're, I don't know, 5 raccoons in a suit. That's what he's trying to show you. He's trying to show what poor of a methodology this is.
Exactly. There's nothing I can't have faith in, right? I could have faith that 1 + 1 = 3. I could take that simply on faith. Who was it? Dr. Dino, not Hovind, the other one, the Aussie. Anyway.
Oh, we cut Jim. We lost your audio. I think you're muted. You're muted. Jim is muted. I see your mic is muted. All right. So Joy, do you understand what we're trying to say here? Do you understand why we have a problem? Like, even if you don't agree with this, do you understand why we're saying this? Do you see where we're coming from? Like, you have a belief. We don't agree with your belief, but we want to try to see if maybe you're right. Maybe we're wrong and you're right. So you are using faith. You're holding our hand and you're trying to walk us through this, and you're trying to get us into a destination. But before we hold your hand, we have to trust that the methodology that you're using to get us to a destination works. Do you understand the problem we have in here?
What I trust is in Jesus. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. But
Jesus is the conclusion. Jesus is the claim. You're making a claim, okay, which is Jesus. Before we accept you trust Jesus. You're talking to us. We don't trust Jesus, okay? You who trust Jesus is trying to tell us why we should trust Jesus, okay? So you cannot just come to us and say, I trust Jesus. We haven't gotten there yet. We are pre-trusting Jesus. So before you could get us from pre-trusting Jesus to trusting Jesus, we have to see what methodology that you have to prove a claim. If we don't trust your methodology, we can't even begin to take the first step with you. So before you prove Jesus to us, you have to prove the methodology to us. Your methodology is faith. How do you know it works? How do you know it works?
I've personally witnessed events in my life, and it's stuff that if I told you,
but that's not faith.
Jesus mentioned.
That's not. If you witnessed it, let's say you witnessed it and it proved your claim, that's evidence. I don't think that's evidence, but if it was actually an observation that matched reality, then you're not using faith. You're telling us that without evidence, we have to believe in something. That is faith. If you actually saw what you ended up believing in, then you are, I would say, poor evidence, but you're at least using some sort of evidence. So that's not faith. Tell me why faith works. You just told me unseen. You told me that believing in things that you have not seen, and now you're telling me that you saw something. That's not unseen.
And what I'm getting at is, or what I wanted to say is, it's like I'm having faith in the Word of God. It's not something, for the things which are seen were made by things that are not seen. It's like
we're past that. Joey, we're past that. We heard that part. Okay, I understand what you mean by faith. I understand what it means. I understand your explanation. Now tell me why it's a good tool. Why is it a good tool for me to figure out what's right and what's wrong? Why is it a good tool?
I'm not making that claim. I'm just saying that salvation is by faith, and we have to have faith. It's not.
Why do you? Okay, if you're calling in to just make claims, are you interested in us agreeing with you, or are you just here to just make claims? Like, why are you telling us? Are you trying to change your mind, or are you just interested in people knowing what you believe in? Do you want us to also agree with you? Do you want us to agree with you?
I would hope, yeah.
Okay, so to do that, you cannot just tell us what you believe. You have to also tell us why we should believe why you believe. The why here, we need the why, okay? Just repeating it's not going to help anybody. If you repeating what you believe, it's not going to help anybody. I could just sit here and tell you, 100 times that I believe in Allah and Muhammad as his prophet. It's not going to do you anything. It's not going to help at all. Are you gonna agree with me just because I repeat a claim? You're just repeating a claim. You have to give us something more. So we heard your claim. Now we're asking why. You're not giving us a why.
Yeah, we need reason to believe
the promised Messiah that was witnessed.
So again, now we go back to, so you're going back to the Bible, and we don't care because we need to prove that the Bible is true, right? There are elements of the Bible that are true. That's why I call it historical fiction, right? So, but the supernatural claims, burning bushes, the Egypt, the flood, all these supernatural claims still need to be proven, and they haven't been proven yet. So now, and you keep going back to this, book 2, fulfilling the prophecies in book 1 is just a trope. We see that all the time. So again, I don't have any reason to believe that the Bible is true or that the Bible is anything more than historical fiction. So you got to give me a reason to believe that it's something more than historical fiction. And you can't point to the Bible and its internal consistency for that, because I would expect that in any well-written book.
Jesus is the bridge to that, where it's like Jesus was God.
Joey, do you understand the difference between making a claim and giving a reason for that claim? Do you understand the difference between those two things? Do you understand the difference between those two things? Do you, Joey? Can you hear me? Do you understand the difference between giving a claim and then giving a reason for that claim? Do you understand the difference between those two things?
Yeah, and my reason is that Jesus was witnessed to be the promised Messiah by.
How do you know any of those witnesses exist?
Testament to that.
Right. How do you know any of those witnesses actually existed and they just aren't characters in the book?
Because are writing themselves, like I, Peter, I, Paul, like the apostles. Everything is
none of the gospels are claimed. None of the gospels are claimed. None of those gospels make the claim that those are the authors. That's the problem. That's why most biblical scholars today don't accept as true the claim that these are eyewitnesses, because nowhere do they actually make that claim. I don't even think Luke does, but I might be wrong about that.
They do.
What can you give me the verse? Give me the verse in Mark where Mark claims that it is Mark speaking.
Okay, just because an author doesn't identify themselves doesn't mean that the author didn't write that.
Then how do you
making the claim?
How do you come to the conclusion that Mark was written by Mark? What is your evidence?
Yes. You're making the claim, Joey. You're making
again.
The claim.
I'm going by faith that Mark wrote the book of Mark, and I'm having faith in.
How do you know that?
In its entirety.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
I have because through my own reason, I have reasoned these books could have not been fabricated.
How did you reason your way? How did you reason your way to Mark was written by Mark? How did you come up to that reason, given that biblical scholars are, while it was true, if you go back 100 years ago, they all made the same claim, but modern biblical scholars are all saying, no, we had bad reasons to believe that. There is no good reason to believe that Mark was written by Mark. What was your reasoning to get there?
The Bible actually warns that in the light, for they will raise the teachers for themselves.
The Bible doesn't say Mark was written by Mark. The Bible doesn't say that the Gospel of Mark was written by Mark. There's nowhere that you can find this.
And that verse doesn't help you get there. That verse does not help you get there at all. It doesn't help you get to Mark. So how do you know that Mark was written by Mark?
By faith, choose to believe that Mark was written by Mark, but you
have no evidence.
Choose to believe.
You have no evidence. What? You're believing without evidence something that is true. That something is true without evidence. Is that rational to believe that something is true without evidence?
In its integrity of the scripture, I believe.
It's a yes or no question. It's a yes or no question. Is it rational to believe in something is true without evidence? It's a yes or no question.
It depends.
Yeah, thanks.
Depends on what?
Being dishonest. You're now being dishonest. Absolutely, you're being dishonest because it is not rational or reasonable to believe in things without evidence. You're not being rational because it is not rational to do that. You have to have evidence, and you have no evidence. The biblical scholars say we have no evidence to believe that Mark was written by Mark. The only reason that you do is because some scribe way back when decided to call it Mark. That's it. We have new original documents.
That's your claim, but
No, we know that. We can go back and look at the early manuscripts and go, this story didn't have Mark's name attached to it here, and it has it here. So somewhere in between these two copies, somebody started calling it Mark. That is the actual evidence that we have. We can go back and look at that. That is the evidence. The manuscripts for Mark that we have that have no Mark, that are not attributed to Mark, and then all of a sudden they are. So we have that evidence, and that's what you have to go and look at to figure out if Mark is actually written by Mark. And how would we even know that? I mean, the only way to know that something was written by somebody, regardless of whose name on it, would be to do handwriting analysis or to find some sort of DNA on the pages, on the original pages, which we don't have. But you'd have to do some sort of handwriting analysis on the original, which we don't have. We don't have the original Mark, and we don't have any writings from Mark because, according to Acts of the Apostles, Mark was unlettered and untutored. He didn't know how to write. And so any way we got that would have to have Mark, a fisherman, a poor fisherman, coming up with enough money for a scribe for him to tell the story to. That's just the way that it works. And that's the way evidence works. So I would really like for you to come back and do some research on how we know Mark is actually Mark, and then come back and tell us. And I'd also like you to really think about my question: is it reasonable to accept something is true without evidence? And then if your answer is yes, examine what could I accept as true that would be reasonable without evidence.
Yeah. I mean, completely makes sense for, if you want to sell a book, just put a famous person's name on it and it sells better. Why not go?
Well, and there are book publishers who do that. There are book publishers who actually do that, especially in the Christian space. Kevin Sorbo is very, very mad on Twitter because people started pointing out he didn't actually write the book. It was just his name, and they just had some other problems with the book as well. But somebody else wrote it, and they put his name on it because it would sell books. They do that today. They did that in the medieval times too. I can point to a fencing manual written, originally written by an Italian author in Italy that has a completely different author in Northern Europe. It's a direct copy of this Italian author's, the Fiore della Berry's Flower of Battle. You can go look it up. It's a complete copy, somebody else's. So they plagiarized, and it worked because who's going to take a 3 or 4 month journey up to the north and go, you plagiarized that? It's much easier to detect plagiarism today. So that happens all the time. Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Great. All right, so before we get to the next call, I need to tell you guys that we now have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. To get there, visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. You can see that the link on the screen. There you can listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Eden, Truth Wanted, The Nonprofits, and others on one channel. That's amazing. All right, so let me read some super chats. Okay, so we have a super chat from Mr. DK. So this one is for 100 rupees. Says, if USA can ban books like Stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, why they allow religious books? Okay, I think, am I still not on the screen? I think I should come back to the screen now. And then there we go. And then we have another super chat from Humanistic Jewish Music, who's a member for 1 month. And this one is £2. And says, can he explain why different Catholic and Protestant Bibles why we have different Catholic and Protestant Bibles? Yeah, and also why other religions they use also the same methodology as him. With faith, you have gotten into so many. With science, with empiricism and rationalism, we get consistent answers. We can see that they have predictive power, that they have explanatory power, that they're conservative, and they're consistent. They don't contradict each other. I mean, they don't contradict each other as much. But with faith, you get random answers, which is, if your methodology is actually getting at truth, the beliefs that it would justify have at least characteristics that are the same as characteristics as something that is true. You get that with science. You get that with rationalism. You don't get that with faith. All right, so I think we have
let me real quick go back to Mr. DK talking about why they allow religious books. Because they're hypocrites. They tried banning pornography, what they considered pornography, in schools, and in Utah, they actually got the Bible banned until a politician stepped in and said, we're not banning the Bible just because it has some porn in it, which it does. I mean, by any definition, it does have it. So because they're hypocrites.
It has certain things on it that I can't even say on YouTube because I think this show would get demonetized, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. All right. So we have another theist on the line. So I'm going to bring Mr. Yummy from Canada wants to say God is just. All his judgments are good. Hi, Mr. Yummy.
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, just before we begin, I have quick statements. Number one, so all these quote-unquote Christians, if you're not solid in your faith, there's no reason to call because you're giving them footage. You're making us look bad, number one. And number two, I think the guy was saying the definition of faith is a predication, is the evidence. Wait. Not that.
Wait. Yummy. Are you talking about what you said you're going to talk about? Like you said,
he said he was going to start with two completely random statements that he wanted to start with.
No.
One of which is gatekeeping and the no true Scotsman fallacy, and then the second one was that faith is the evidence you need, and we've already covered that. Faith is not evidence. So, can we start with what do you mean by just and what do you mean by good? In your statement that wants to say God is just and all his judgments are good. So define just and define good for us, please.
Yeah. Before I do that, just to clarify, number one, there's no such thing of a no true Scotsman fallacy when you're doing the internal critique.
Okay, I'm gonna miss it, Yummy. I'm gonna mute you. Can we talk about, like you told our call screeners that you want to talk about why God is just?
Let's get back to that. I don't really care about the first two statements. They're completely useless. Can you please define justice, what you mean by justice and what you mean by good?
Yes, let's talk about what you told us you want to talk about. And if we have time, we could get back to those other topics. But God is just, that's your claim. So go on with that. Explain.
Okay, so thank you for unmuting me. All I wanted to do is correct the false claims made by the last guy, but no problem.
Whatever.
You guys don't want to do that. So
Just
we can
get
move
to
on
the
to the
point.
justice part. Yeah, we can
Get
go to the
the
justice
point.
part. So, so a God, when I say just, I mean God, number one, is sovereign because he is God, number one. And number two, everything that he does is morally acceptable because number one, he's God and everything he does is good. So I heard you guys arguing.
So God killing the entire planet is good. That's what you're saying.
God, when you talking about Genesis 6, when he killed all the Nephilim, genetically modified people? Yeah, that's good.
So first, now you're making a bunch more claims. I just said when God killed everybody in the world, and I was actually talking about the flood. So when God killed everybody, that was good. God killing everybody is good. That's what you're saying.
That's not what I said. I said him killing genetically modified people, Nephilim, as per that chapter, yes, that's good.
That's not, no, he killed the entire world. He flooded the entire world, killed everybody, but no one in his family.
Babies. When he drowned babies, okay.
There weren't babies because I just said they were Nephilim, genetically modified. Only.
So now you got a whole bunch more claims. You got a whole bunch more claims that you've got to prove.
I'm doing an internal critique, buddy. You're supposed to accept it.
No, I don't have to accept it.
I think
you need much more stuff. No. So let me give you a definition of good that actually kind of, yeah.
Okay.
So my definition of good is anything that promotes human happiness and across the entire population, not just for an individual. Killing people does not promote happiness. It just can't. It creates entirely too many negative feelings for those who survive. The survivor's guilt from the flood is just really, really bad. This would create such incredible amounts of PTSD that they might very well have been paralyzed if it had actually happened. But since we know the flood didn't happen, it doesn't really matter. But this is the problem that you're going to have with you trying to actually say that God is good just because God did it, because all of a sudden now you're justifying all kinds of things. You're justifying God's support of slavery. Slavery is not a good thing. It does not promote human happiness across the entire population. Him setting up, if you want to claim he's the omni-God and he's got all the omni traits, then God created the world just to kill his son. That's not good. God playing with Abraham is also not good. That's not a good thing to do. That's a really, really horrible way to treat a friend or somebody you know. All these things are just really, really bad and make your God a moral monster. Now, the only defense that you have is your claim that God is good. And I can see nothing where that claim is true. Not in anything that he's done. He is a moral monster by the standard of promoting human happiness, or you can even say human well-being. I'm okay with that too. But with that as my standard for good, I can judge your God, and he is not just, he is not good. He does not do anything to promote human happiness and well-being.
Mr. Yami, I have a question. How do you define good? Can you tell me how do you define good?
Anything God does. That's his definition of good. Am I right?
Is that your definition?
Am I on mute? I'm still on mute.
Yeah, no, you're not. No, you're not. Can you?
I was on mute when this guy went on a rant, making a whole bunch of false claims. So can I address the false claims?
No, you were not.
Everything he said is a lie.
You weren't on mute.
That is true.
Answer my question. Mr. Yami, answer my question before I drop you, okay? If you don't answer my question, I'm going to drop you.
Okay, so you guys want to have a monologue, have a monologue. I'm done with you guys. All right, thanks.
I'm asking you. Okay, go. Okay.
Yeah, so that was not Yami.
You know what?
His definition
is troll?
No. His definition of God is that everything God does is good because God is omnibenevolent. And so if God decides to kill the entire human race, he gets to do that. His claim about Nephilim, I've heard before, and everybody who makes that claim just has a hard time actually trying to prove that. There's a whole bunch of problems with that, especially if you go back. Anyway, yeah. No, he was not a troll. There are people actually who believe exactly what he says. So,
it tells a lot about you if we can't tell you if you're serious, but we can't tell that you're a troll or not. That tells us a lot about your conversation. Also, it's not a monologue when I'm asking you a question. I have a question and I want you to answer. Like, if you guys want to have a monologue, how is this a monologue? I'm asking you a question. I'm waiting
you're talking about my rant.
answer me.
That was a monologue. because I didn't give him a chance to respond to any of that. And quite frankly, there is no response because I started with what I defined good as, and then pointed out how none of those things are actually good. Now, his counterclaim is that God did them, so therefore they're good. And I completely disagree with that as my standard. I don't think taking God as my standard of good and God's actions as my standard of good is a good way to live my life at all. I don't think it's good to do any of that. So,
right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, he could have. I still think you didn't do a monologue because he was going to be here to be able to respond to all of that. Like, if I was going to give him a chance to first answer, because I think before we discuss this, we have to understand. Like you did this, Jim, at the beginning. You wanted him to define his words. I mean, I don't think we could have a productive conversation if we don't know what we're talking about. So I was going to make him define what he means by good, and then he could have responded to me. No,
he did define it. Yes,
his definition is like circular, though. It's circular. Like
anything God does is good. Anything God does is just. That's his definition.
Okay, but then to prove, but that's circular. Like you're saying, whatever God does is good.
I didn't say it was a good one.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't say it was a good one.
Okay.
I just said that was his explanation, and that was his definition. And yeah, it's not good, right? It's a divine command theory. If you're looking for the moral system, it's called divine command theory, and it's got serious flaws. Right. So,
Okay. I'm going to take one. Yeah, this is very dangerous. It's so dangerous. If to define good, whatever God says, that will be your definition of good. Like, I understand that good and bad are social concepts, and it's up to us how we define it. But there are good ways to define that, but there are more productive ways to define that and less productive ways to define that. We can show you that the way we, utilitarianists, define good and bad is more, productive. It actually helps humanity more. It gets us to higher levels of well-being than the definition of good and bad defined by whatever God says is good and whatever God says is bad is bad. That is dangerous. You could justify genocide with that. You could justify.
It has been. I mean, that's how Hitler justified killing the Jews. You could justify all kinds of things. All somebody has to do is convince you that they are directly talking to God, and then they can convince you to commit atrocities. And that's the real problem with everything. So, yeah.
Right. All right. So I'm going to take one more call from Martin from California. Hi, Martin.
Hello. How you doing?
Good. You wanna advice about overcoming your feelings, right? That's something to do with something. You have a feeling that somebody is watching over you, and you want to overcome that. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. Well, I guess it's kind of like unlearning. I guess it's part of the deconstruction, right? When you go from, I mean, it's been 22 years for me of walking away from church. But obviously, I think, Jim, you were a Christian before, correct?
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I was a Catholic.
Okay. So I was thinking you might understand, like, I walked away, but, I still had that belief for a few years, but I started to, again, just peel away things and realize it wasn't, it didn't fit my life. I would tell my family, like, church just isn't for me anymore. It's not for me. It felt very liberating to walk away. I mean, I was a worship leader. I was, very involved in the inner circles of one of them was a big mega church, and seeing all the things inside. But so for me now, only in the last couple months where I can really start to identify, and listening to your show, realize that, I'm pretty much an atheist. I mean, I am an atheist. There's nothing to convince me that God is who I thought God was, or that there is a God at all. But there are times where I don't know if I grew up Catholic as well, became a born again Christian at 17, but this feeling like there's a presence around, and like, that's just something like, how do you shake that? How do you get rid of that?
Is it bothering you?
It doesn't bother me, but it's just like, it makes me question, like, why do I feel that?
Because you've been taught that it's true.
Indoctrinated too long.
Yeah, exactly. You've just been indoctrinated with it, and it's going to take some effort on your part to go every time you feel that to say, "Oh yeah, that's not true," and to convince yourself that it isn't true. Is going to be a large part of that. Now, I would also ignore all the cameras that are around us today because we're in a surveillance society. And I say surveillance, I don't mean government surveillance. I mean, ATM cameras, people have cameras on doors and all kinds of things for private interest. But I would ignore those. But yeah, I think just one day at a time and keep reminding yourself that, that God doesn't exist. He's not actually watching me masturbate. He's not watching me have sex with my loved one. He's not watching any of these things. Or you could go the other route and just give him a good show. Pick one.
Jim, I also heard that it's also natural. Martin, I also think that for some people. Go ahead. You go ahead. I'll tell you later.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You go ahead. Go ahead.
I also think that for some people, I've heard, like I've read somewhere that it's also for some people it's natural, like it's genetical, like we have that within us. The human brain seems to be wired in a way that it detects agency where there's no agency, and this might be part of that. I mean, going through religious brainwashing will increase that feeling, but it might just be part of how your brain operates. And you could just be okay with it. I don't see, if it's not bothering you, just like, okay, I have this sense of somebody watching me. Like, as long as it's not, why would you want to get rid of it if it's not bothering you? Let's just let it just be. As long as it's an illusion, just let it sit there.
Yeah, I guess I just don't want to feel it at all. I just don't want to feel it all. And I guess the second part of what I was saying is, as someone, I've never told my family, other than my niece, who's also an atheist, that I'm an atheist. My family's very Christian, and there are times where they tell me things and I just bite my tongue, but I'm at the point where I just don't want to bite my tongue. I just want to state, my stance and create, have boundaries. I don't like when my family comes to my home and wants to pray for the meal. I don't want them to pray for the meal. I want to do it without, being rude, but I also want to set boundaries as well. And it becomes difficult.
I'm not out to my parents. I think most of my cousins know and my sister knows, but my parents don't, which is really, really odd until you realize that, well, they're not on the internet pretty much at all. So, and for me, it took a few years of me just saying, no, I'm not interested in going to mass when I was, staying there, if I was visiting. I lived in Phoenix where they lived for a number of years as well. And they just never called and said, hey, do you want to come to church or anything? And so for me, it just was kind of like they stopped asking after a while. If they came over to my house for a meal, we didn't pray. We just dug into the meal. So it was still my house and my rules. And if my mom or my dad wanted to say a quick prayer before they ate and they didn't involve everybody else, I wouldn't care. But yeah, it's my house, my rules. We don't pray. We just dig in. That makes sense. So I've got a little bit different view on it. I'm not hiding it either, right? Obviously I'm on this show. If you follow my Facebook, I'm not hiding my atheism. But also I can say with high degree of confidence, my parents probably don't know. That just seems very unlikely for them to know. And that is deliberate because I don't know of I can't see that conversation going well at all. And I want to keep my relationship with my parents. And I see it's going so badly that I wouldn't keep my relationship with my parents. Where my mom and I are both too hot-headed for that. And my dad, when my mom gets mad, my dad gets mad. So it's a whole thing. So I don't. I just live my life the way that I want. We see each other. We keep it very secular. I don't think they notice. Maybe they do. I don't know. But, my mom doesn't ask, have you been to mass lately? Have you been to confession? She doesn't ask any of those things. And hasn't for a long time because I keep saying no. She says, why? I'm just haven't gotten around to it. But she's eventually stopped asking. It just took a few years. So I don't know. Maybe that will work for you. I don't know your exact situation, but for me, it was just.
Yeah. We lost Jim again.
I think with my mother.
Yeah, go on, Martin.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go on. You go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think my situation with my mother or even close family is they know I'm not a Christian anymore. I've stated that, but I've never come out and said I'm an atheist. And with my son, it drives me nuts. He's 26, but he's like exactly the way I used to be, just a really hardcore fundamentalist Christian, and he's been pretty banal. And I've been trying to save him from that, but we've had arguments. So I just let it go. I think it doesn't serve anybody any good to try to have a conversation because no one wants to listen, to my experience.
Yeah.
And the new information I've come up with, so it's hard.
Right. What is a higher priority for you? Maintaining a relationship with these people, or standing your ground and telling them that you're an atheist? Which one is more important to you?
Right now, it's to just love them and have that relationship with them. Yeah, I want to have a good, peaceful relationship. So that's more important.
Right. So given that that's
the other things will begin to evolve,
Right. Slowly.
Yeah. But it helps to talk about it. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for your input.
Yeah, no worries.
I give other callers a chance to come in.
Yeah. Let me just say something. It's important to ask yourself, I think, because for every person, their situation is different, and what works for me and what works for Jim might be different for what works for Martin. But I think, in all of these, what I think is the same is asking yourself, what do I want, and how this action will affect that. Because for some people, making sure that everybody understands that they don't like this, they don't agree with this, that is a higher priority. For some people, making sure that there's no tension within their family, that's a higher priority. And then we have to see what is the relationship between these two. For some people, mentioning that and telling people that they're an atheist causes a lot of tension. For some people, it doesn't cause any tension. For some people, it's something in between, causes a little bit of tension. So evaluating, doing going a trial and error in your mind, also playing around with it instead of jumping in with both feet into it, testing, first saying I'm not a Christian, or just not showing up to church, and then slowly progressing through this might be a good way to both test the waters and see what works, and also for them to not be shocked, because if you slowly introduce them to the concept, it wouldn't be as shocking as all of a sudden coming out and telling them that you're an atheist. So I think what you're doing is very smart. You understand, you haven't told them that you're an atheist, but they are already familiar with you not being Christian. So you're doing it. I think it's very smart. I think you're doing it well.
Well, I think they suspect it because my son even called me an atheist. I go, why do you call me an atheist? I never told you I was an atheist. He's like, well, just the way you talk. I'm like, but I never wanted to put a label on myself. But, to me, it's not really a label. It's just, hey, I just don't believe in anything, Yeah. But it's really difficult for my mother because, I know she's got that fear I'm going to go to hell. And I go to my son, I said, so do you think I'm going to hell? He goes, well, it's not what I think. It's what the Bible. I go, so how do you sleep at night thinking your dad's going to hell? I like posing those questions to make people think, though. I think sometimes we need to be challenged in our thinking, no matter how old we are and what stage of life we're in. Because I'm 54 years old now, and, just getting away from this indoctrination has been really, at times, a struggle. But most of the time, I'm fine. But there are times where just things pop up, and you just kind of, I don't want to say I doubt myself, because there's nothing to doubt. But so yeah. But I really appreciate this show. Yeah. And I thank you guys for your work. You're doing a great job. And you guys have amazing patience with people. I can't believe it.
We try.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
All
right. You guys.
Sorry. All right, Martin. Talk to you later. Call him back again if you have anything to say. All right, cool. I just want to add one more thing to this. I don't know if you agree with this, Jim. One thing else, because I don't want to give general advice because I know everyone's situation is different.
Yeah.
But one thing that if it's possible, I think generally helps is if you are having these kinds of disagreement with members of your family, try to put a lot of emphasis on expressing love and kindness, because you are basically making it very difficult for them to hate you if you do that a lot. Like calling your mother more often, telling them that you love her, expressing love and kindness and attention to your son, to your sister, to your daughter, whatever. Just make it very difficult for them to hate you. I think with the expression of love,
that's some good advice there. And and that's why I say that, this is what I've done and that is why I made that decision, right? Some people, everybody has a different relationship with their parents than I do, and everybody's relationship is unique. And so you have to, I would talk to a lot of people who are out and who aren't, because there are some who have come out and it has not ended well. So, just all kinds of fun with that. And it's not easy. I don't want anybody to conclude that it is easy. It is not. It's one of the hardest things you can do to talk to your parents about something, especially with parents whose identity is wrapped up in their Christianity. That could be very, very bad.
All right. Yeah, actually, I was very lucky with my parents. I remember the first time I told my parents I was an atheist, they were like, "Oh, thank God." Because when I was not an atheist, I was like a religious freak that would constantly bother them. So they were very happy when I became an atheist. All right. All right. So I need to tell you guys that to visit our store, okay, for limited edition t-shirt. This one is very clever. I like it. And it's limited edition. So make sure you don't miss out on this one. It says, all of the evidence for your God fits in the box below. And as you can see, there's no box. Are you guys? Yeah, you have noticed that there's no box. There isn't a box. Okay, I think because I shouldn't explain the joke. I'm not gonna. They tell me to explain the joke. I think I will ruin it if I explain the joke. Okay, so visit tiny.cc/merch ACA to get this. Again, this is limited edition, so make sure you get it before it stops. And also, we want to send a big thank you out to the crew who put out this show together every week. So we should be able to see them now. No? Okay. Yeah, there we go. Hello. Yeah. Hey. Okay. So that's
somebody's outstanding in their field.
All right. That's cool. That's good. I like that part, especially the cat part. I like that part.
Yeah.
All right. So if you happen to be in the Austin area on October 29, 2023, then please join us for the live broadcasts of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Talk Heathen will be hosted by Christy Powell and Johnny P. Angel, and the Atheist Experience will be hosted by Johnny P. Angel and Sophia Spina. Did I read that right? Spina, I think I read that right. Doors open at noon, and we hope to see you there. Well, not me. I wouldn't be there, but yeah, the rest of it. I wish I could be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's an absolute blast if you go. If you show up, it's an absolute blast to see everybody. We've got different places. If you just want to watch the show and actually see people through the glass, there's a place for that where we keep it kind of quiet. And we've got I call it the MST3K room, where if you want to yell at the callers and join other people in yelling at the callers, you can do that as well there, as well as just hanging around a bunch of really great people, all of whom don't believe. So, it is an absolute blast. And there's nothing like doing a live show. Absolutely nothing like doing a live show.
Now you're making me jealous. Thanks, Jim.
Well, that just means you're going to have to show up in Austin here one of these days and do a live show and find out exactly what I'm talking about. It's awesome.
Yeah. By the way, I really think we had a great show. We had a lot of theists today. I was worried that we're not going to get theists, but we had a lot of
except for Mr. Yummy, who is really kind of Mr. Yucky, but
All right, guys. Well, that was it. Guys, make sure you like the stream and leave a comment after the show. Make sure you answer the question of the week. Okay, and we will read it again on the next show. So, yeah, that's about it, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Have fun.
What will it take for Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.